Hello and welcome to Wednesday's Hotline Live. Forgot what I was doing there. Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel Caw. For the second night running, I'm joined by the one and only Michael Gannon. Mick, how's it going?
Not bad. By the way, hotline's the right word for it, isn't it? It's roasting today. And we were stuck indoors. So we're outside with the flip-flops on, the barbecue going.
We're also joined for the second time this week by the one and only Scott Burns. Burnsy, how's it going?
Good, yourselves?
Well, Mick is spot on when he says, I mean, this studio could double as a sauna. It is absolutely brutal. I'm one of those weird people. I like when it's kind of cold and that. Anyone else share that? No.
Not outside. I like the sunshine sitting outside, but not in the studio. You're sweating yourself into oblivion. No. But anyway, we'll soldier on it.
Anyway, I think the best place for us to start, Mick, is perhaps Celtic. You were at Lennoxtown today, I understand, talking to Luke McCowan, and of course that kind of the pesky issue of the Guard of Honour come up once again.
I mean, that story is one of these ones that come round quite often, don't they? Plus, the way that their league's kind of constructed in the split, and the way the cops don't like to have kind of old firm derbies as deciders, there's every chance that they're going to meet the game after a title's been done. So here we are again, and questions getting asked: is there going to be a Guard of Honour? No, there's not going to be a Guard of Honour. At no point in time was there ever going to be a Guard of Honour in an old firm game. It's just the nature of the business. And listen, in fairness, Luke McCowan was asked it as well if he expects one, and he's laughing. To be honest with you, he's tongue firmly in his cheek. He's like, no, I don't think so. That's not how it works. So he knows that it's not going to be on the agenda for this weekend, because Rangers and Celtic are. Listen, the nature of the beast in Glasgow, the rivalry is. The home crowd just would not accept a Guard of Honour. It's just not. I mean, things like sporting behaviour or sporting integrity, even these are not parts of the Glasgow sporting vernacular. So we can ask the question, but you know the answer before it's even asked, and you have a bit of fun with it. But that's all it is, really, isn't it? It's a bit of knockabout fun, a bit of pantomime stuff.
You mentioned before we came on, Burnsy, that McCowan was part of a Dundee team that gave Dundee United a Guard of Honour. So should we maybe in Glasgow follow suit? No, what do you think?
Certainly, that was the first game of the season. Obviously, Dundee United coming up from the Championship, and Derby in the first game, and I think Luke McCowan was maybe captain that day for Dundee, and they gave their city rivals a Guard of Honour. But what mine is when it comes to the management and the players, I don't really think they care a jot whether there's a Guard of Honour or not. You know what I mean? It's more a respect thing, isn't it? You know what I mean? If teams can pay their respects, but I don't think in the grand scheme of things anyone really cares. I mean, the fans, if their team's won it, obviously they're wanting their rivals to. I mean, they've already beaten their rivals, and it's probably the next humiliation is the Guard of Honour. So it's more the fans, I think, that want it than anyone else. But at this time of year, it's always a good talking point.
The thing is, we're trying to kind of encourage slightly better behaviour of these games, because we're only just starting to get sizable numbers of fans back into the away games. This is only the second game, whatever we're going to have it. And already we've had bad behaviour across the grounds in recent years, coins getting thrown, and we had Watergate after the last one at Celtic Park, and fans trying to go on the pitch and all that, and things getting thrown. And we're trying to encourage best behaviour. And you think, well, I don't want to make the nice way of setting a tone, you know what I mean? Like a nice kind of sporting gesture. But in Glasgow, that would actually start the riot. So it would be on its head. It would actually be the worst thing to do. It got off to the wrong footing straight away. Listen, Dundee Derby, they're a bit more friendly up in Tayside, aren't they? Whereas in Glasgow, the rivalry it was very deep. So it's never ever going to be happening at any point in time in our lifetime.
Can I just put that on record that it was Michael Gannon that said that the rivalry in Dundee and Dundee United is not as deep?
I just think they're a bit more chummy up there. A bit more chummy. It's a bit more banter kind of based, isn't it? The rivalry up there.
You say so, Mick.
Dundee United don't like Aberdeen. They don't like Dundee hate St Johnstone. St Johnstone don't like the two of them.
That's true.
I mean, it's a tangled web up up your neck of woods, Burnsy.
We've actually had a lot of comments on this. I think you mentioned a moment ago, Burnsy. I don't know how much of an appetite there is, really, to be honest, from fans. This one from Davey, he says, we didn't get a Guard of Honour when we won it from Celtic a few years ago. Should never happen. Let the tin pot clubs do it for them. Andy says, given the pettiness that's been running back and forth for years, why would a Guard of Honour be appropriate by either? Shallow gestures have no place on the periphery of sport. Paul, who's a Celtic fan, says, I'm sure they're going to play simply the best for the champions out in the field. We can't ask much more than that. And this one from Mark, he simply says, Big Jock Wallace would have given him the Malky for asking for a Guard of Honour, which, I don't think we could rule out.
I would ban them. I would ban Guard, or even I'd ban them anywhere, right? And any club that offered one up, I'd fine them or dock them points or something, right? Because it's a rugbyfication of football. Football never had Guards on at any point in time. It's a rugby thing. After the game, they clap each other off and all that, and then they go and drink each other in oblivion and throw each other off in bars and all that stuff. That's different. It's a different sport. If there's no place in football for a Guard of Honour, it should be banned. It should be heavy fines dished out and points deductions for it.
Aye, I actually agree. I don't. There's no appetite for it. Hoopsaholic here chiming in saying it's a rugby thing as well.
There we go.
They're rivals. Do you know what I mean? They should be rivals. They should behave like rivals within reason.
Throwing rotten fruit and veg at each other.
Before we move on from Celtic and Rangers, was there anything else from Luke McCowan that you can give us a wee sneak preview ahead of tomorrow's Record Sport?
No, just listen. It's just that the appetite is still there for Celtic to keep the foot down at the end of the season. I think. I think there is a kind of undercurrent about the last couple of derby games where the Celtic feel as though they didn't do themselves justice. Certainly the game at Ibrox when they lost 3-0, never really turned up. The game at Celtic Park, and also the poor first half, they came back and managed to lose the game at the end. I think those results have kind of stuck in the craw a wee bit with Celtic. Mm-hmm. So listen, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. They've done what they set out to do, is win the league. But I still think there's a kind of element in the squad that want to settle that score. I don't think they want those kind of bragging rights to kind of linger in the final game of the season. So I've seen before Celtic kind of coming out all guns blazing when they've got a kind of score to settle. We saw it against Aberdeen in the Cup when they'd been held to a draw at Celtic Park. They came out and blew away. You saw it against St Johnstone when they dropped points, lost to St Johnstone in Perth, and then at Hampden they had a real malice about them to inflict that on St Johnstone again. So I think Celtic will. I don't think sometimes when the title's done, you might see the motivation levels drop, but I don't think you will from Celtic this weekend. I think they will be motivated to go out and kind of reinforce their kind of dominance in terms of their champions, and they need to go and show why they're champions. And I think McCowan, listen, he wasn't fanning any flames. He's a good character, right enough. I think he's more talking about his own personal journey. And there's good stuff in tomorrow's paper about his own journey. As we know, he was a part-time player down at Ayr and all that stuff, and obviously down to Dundee. So some nice stuff from him about his own kind of personal voyage to get to this stage. And you get the impression that he has really kind of savoured this kind of success. As someone at 27 who maybe thought that chance might have passed him by, he's certainly making the most of it. So there's some nice stuff, and also some good old-fashioned old firm build-up as well, which we like.
He looks, you took the word out of my mouth there, Nick, that he looks like someone that's living the dream. You know, a Celtic fan that has been given that opportunity. I don't think he'll play at the weekend right enough, but he just looks like he's loving every second of being a Celtic player. Yeah,
and I don't think, but he's not a tourist, by the way. This is not a kid that's like a kid, say 27. It's not a young guy who's turning up thinking, I won a lottery ticket here. I mean, I've not won the was they call it the Paradise Windfall raffle? What do you call it? He's earned his shot, and I think he's grabbed it as well. I think he's been a good player for us this season. I think he's all right. He's maybe not a guaranteed start every week, but I think every time he plays, he's had an impact. I think there's been certain games where he's been really good from the bench. A couple of games maybe not quite had the impact he wanted, but I think he's been a good signing. I mean, a bargain buy, worth every penny and beyond. And he's felt, what was the old phrase? He's felt the jersey. I don't think he's looked out of place with Celtic. And I actually think there's more to come from him as well. I think he's going to be one of these players like a kind of like a Paul Hartley type that I think gets better every year. Excuse me. So I think Celtic will get the best years of him. And I think he'll go on. You'll see him becoming more and more influential at Celtic. It wouldn't surprise me to see him playing at his 30s at Celtic and being a real key player there. We've seen guys do that in the past at places like Rangers and Celtic, flourishing late in their careers. He's a good character, good temperament. He works hard. He listens to his manager, and he's a footer player. He's a nice footer player as well. Reads the game brilliantly. He's got a great pass in him. So I think he's got a big future. I think he's enjoyed his moment. I think he deserves to enjoy his moment, but I think he's got a big future at the club.
Before we move on from Celtic, there's a story on Record Sport Online today regarding some of the most searched terms over the last few months in Glasgow. One of them has been Kvistgaarden, who's the Brøndby striker. He's got 18 goals and 28 appearances for Brøndby this season. He's a guy, Mick, that just keeps getting linked with Celtic over and over again. But it kind of brings up the question, is another striker what's needed in the summer?
Well, I think so. I mean obviously Dyson Maeda has made that role his own since Kyogo left, but there's only Adam Maeda there as well. So you think you need another one, because Maeda's having to carry the burden of being the main striker and one of the main wide men, sometimes in the same games. I mean, it might do an hour up front, then he'll come on, he'll go and play the flank for another 20 minutes. That's not sustainable over a season. Can't keep asking to do that. So they do need another striker. Listen, this guy's name's been bounced about for the best part of Bonzo, you know better than me. That's the best part 18 months, maybe 2 years.
A long time.
This name popped up. Listen, they could have had him 2 years ago for a lot less than we're talking now, because he's continued to do the goods for Brøndby, and his values is risen. So now at the stage that he's going to be quite expensive. But Celtic haven't been shy in spending money on players that they want. So it'd be interesting if we do go back in and have another nibble at him. But I say it has been a long term target.
What's your gut feeling, Mick? Do you think they will go for
him? I don't. I think it's one of these names that's going to, but it's going to be like bounced around for so long. It'll be like what we might turn out. What might happen is they might say him when he's 34. He's got 140 caps for Denmark or something, and he turns up eventually. There's like the old Robbie Keane rumour, wasn't it? Or something like that, every summer. So I don't know. Listen, I think Celtic will have a lot of targets, and it will be the case that they'll try and shoot for numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the list and see who they can get. So yeah, I'd be surprised if he rocked up at Celtic Park after all this chat, but you never know.
You're right when you mention that we've actually got the transfer guru with us tonight. So Burnsy, I mean, what's your gut feeling in Celtic? Do you think it'll be a busy summer for them?
I think it'll definitely be a busy summer, but the information I was given previously was that centre forward wasn't the priority. I mean, it was a right-sided winger and a couple of midfielders and a central midfielder and a defensive midfielder were the current priorities that the Celtic recruitment team had put out in recent weeks, meaning to obviously attract any availability. So unless they've already got a centre forward lined up, you know what I mean? Those were the priorities at that stage. So you would still think they would need another striker, but with Diaz and Maeda going through the middle, Adamida, I mean, do they need another one beyond that? They probably do still need another one, because I mean they could do another young one as well, because I mean obviously it looks like Daniel Cummings is going to West Ham as well, so you would think they want a development striker as well. And obviously they looked at the David Strelic in the last window as well, and that just proved too rich for them as well. So they might have something lined up.
Yeah, Brendan Rodgers himself did say in January he wanted another striker, but I think that was before Maeda became the main man, didn't it? I mean, he knew Maeda could play there. I don't think he realised he was going to be that good in that position. That he became the new Henrik Larsson in the last kind of 4 months. But it's whether or not he can sustain that, and it's also whether or not where he sees Adamida in the big picture, because Adamida scored a few goals this season, scored a couple at the weekend. Is he ready to be the main man or the main support? I think there's still kind of question marks there. But like you say, if Bundy's right, I think if they can get one in, a young upcoming. I mean, they've got Johnny Kenny in the books. I know that Rodgers likes, and he's been working hard with them as well behind the scenes. But did they go and get a kind of a £2 or £3 million kind of young guy coming up? They can bang a few goals. I think that would make sense. I think the burden on Maeda and Ida right now is too much. Yeah. So it would make sense.
Hoopsaholic there, I just put it up on the screen, says we've needed a defensive midfielder since 2 years before Bruni left. That is the one area that I would say that perhaps even for the Champions League in particular, that Celtic perhaps need to strengthen as well. Especially if Hatate leaves this season, which I would say is possible.
No, potentially. I think Hatate, you get into that stage. I think he's another good season. He sets us high standards. I think may dip slightly feel a bit kind of quick to criticise him. I think he's a top player. How much they can command from him, I don't know at this point in time, but I think it might be that he feels a new challenge is up. We don't know. It's a hard guy to read. But I think they would want more. And a defensive midfield player is one that's always. But I think the thing is, right, they don't particularly need one week in, week out. They get by quite well with Callum McGregor and that kind of role.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, do they go out and spend 10 million quid on a defensive midfield player who's only really required to play in the Champions League?
You don't really need him most weeks.
A spoiler or a destroyer most weeks when you're clattering 3.5 goals a game. Do you know what I mean? So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky balance to maintain for Celtic.
Before we move on from Celtic, Mark says Maeda will leave for big money. Marzuno says, I can't think of another player like Maeda. We need to keep him. And Rebel asks you directly, Michael. He says, do you think Maeda's going to be the main man for a few years more, Michael?
I think he will. I mean, listen, you're just asking, but you're asking gut feelings because we don't know. I mean, the market will dictate what happens to him next. I think he's got another big move in him right enough, but I think he seems quite content. I'm just wondering where he goes. I mean, I think he's finishing this last 5 months. Well, I've alerted a few teams that he's a different kind of player. And I've said before on the show that as a wide man, he's so effective, especially in Scotland. I think the higher up you go, I think it becomes less effective. I don't think you can harass Champions League fullbacks the same way you can harass Scottish fullbacks. They don't have that rabbits in the headlight look. Sometimes you get Scotland when you get Dyson Maeda charging down on you. So I think if you got Dortmund, they just take a sidestep and pass their way out these things. So I don't know. I think as a winger, I don't know where his ceiling is. As a striker now, though, that's the interesting one. Is somebody going to think this guy's as a striker? I mean, he plays centre forward for Japan. Remember,
right?
So there will be interest, and it depends on the kind of what money comes in. He's priceless for Celtic. That's the thing. He's worth fortunes for Celtic. But what will they worth in the transfer market? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. We always do around numbers in Scotland, like the best players at Celtic and maybe perhaps even Rangers at some point, they go, what, 15, 20 million, 25 million. Celtic seem to hit 25 million for a few guys now. Can you hit that level? I don't know. I just don't. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not convinced that they get 25 million for him. But the market dictates these things.
Right. What's your gut feeling, Burnsy? Do you think he'll be a Celtic player after the summer window closes? I
think he will, because Celtic will want top drawer. They'll want the maximum for the player, and you can understand why, because the impact he's made at Celtic. I think the issue is that he's 27, isn't he? He's going to be 28 in October.
2 years left in his deal.
Once you get to that sort of age, that 28 age, it's hard to get big money. So probably if they're going to sell him, it might have to be this summer. But I'm not sure what clubs. A lot of clubs are going for younger players and that as well. When it comes to the bigger transfer fees, if you buy Maeda, could walk into like a lot of top teams in Europe. You know what I mean? But is there much of a sell-on value on him if they pay big bucks just now? He's 27. They give him a 3-year contract. For a lot of clubs, they might be looking at it as dead money. You know what I mean? But if you've seen him in the flesh, then there's no doubt that he could add to most teams. And I think if people get eyes on him, then that's probably the best chance of getting the top dollar.
I suppose the only thing is, Bonzi, you know yourself, like, see that top end of the Championship, low end of the Premier League England, 20 million quid for these guys. They're not scared to write that off. I mean, they'll spend 20 million quid, especially on a striker who might get them 10, 12 goals a season. So that's a market I think is maybe the one you can look at, because these aren't clubs that were particularly looking down the line. Do you know what I mean? It's reselling value. If you're especially the Premier League bottom end, it's very much quick fix, isn't it? When you look at something like even something going down, like something like a Leicester, who are losing kind of Jamie Vardy. Well, I mean, if I was Leicester, I'd be like 25 million for Dyson Maeda. It'd be an absolute no-brainer.
He reminds me of Jamie Vardy a bit, actually, Mick.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying. He's that kind of, now that he's added this kind of cutting edge to his game, and that's the kind of fit he would have. But I mean, it just depends on the desperation for someone who's got pace and can score goals. It sounds like a good move for most clubs, really. But it's hard to see.
Just before we move on, Mark says Dyson Maeda's worth £25 million easily. I'd be looking, he says, for £50. I assume.
Well, that's a bit harsh. 50 quid, he's worth more than that.
We'll have a whip round. We'll get him playing for Record Sport.
I think it for Canadians.
Burnsy, we have to turn to you now because we mentioned league reconstruction earlier this week on the Hotline Live. You filed a story which is on Record Sport Online now, if you want to have a read at it, about potential change, not within the Premiership, but perhaps lower down in the Scottish Pyramid.
Yeah, obviously we all know that there was a working group were looking at potential reconstruction ways to take the game forward, and obviously the initial talk was about the Premiership, and talking about obviously increasing that. I think Falkirk and a few of the Championship clubs were looking to try and increase the Premiership. Another team had obviously put forward the 10-team proposal. So right away, you were thinking the Premiership wasn't going to change because of the 11-1 vote. That's what happened. I think there was the meeting. But I think that a lot of the clubs who were wanting change were looking for some more money to flow down from the Premiership down the leagues. And I think obviously the top clubs have just turned around and said no to that sort of thing. So obviously the money from Europe and that. So that was knocked on the head. So obviously the Premiership clubs, they've agreed to stay at 12. But there seems to be obviously a desire for change below our top flight. And the working group put forward, I know a proposal was discussed on Monday. It was increasing the Championship to 14 teams, and then it was below that was 16 teams in League One, and then it was also discussed an 8-team set up in League Two, and that would obviously mean probably that was the proposal. That was one that was discussed, right? That would mean 8 new teams can enter top flight and into the senior ranks.
Yeah.
So, I think that was put forward. I think the initial thought that's not going to work, but there certainly seems to be an appetite to try and increase the number of clubs in the league. So it could well open avenues for more of our clubs to join the senior ranks out with the normal pyramid setup, which we've seen in the past with the likes of Inverness and Ross County, etc., coming through and adding something to the leagues.
The only thing, Mick, Craigie says here, all leagues should be 2 straight up, 2 down. That's the only thing that really doesn't sit well with me in the current structure. Particularly getting promoted to the Premiership. One goes straight up and then you have to go through this silly, convoluted playoff phase that's heavily weighted towards the team that finishes 11th. It just doesn't seem fair to me.
Yeah, that's the closed shop arrangement having the top flight. It should be 2 down. It should be 2 down, 1 automatic going up from the Championship, and then we should have a proper playoff situation. See this, the playoff we've got this now with the 4th team plays a 3rd team, and they play the 2nd team, they play the top flight team who sat in their backside for 4 weeks watching these 3 teams not build each other.
Aye.
And very rarely do you get to that stage that the team coming up get a chance, really. I would love to see the Championship being a kind of 16 team even, and then having a bumper playoffs at the end for that second promotion place. But again, you're back to the kind of, as Scott just touched on, the top flight. They're not going to give away another position without a massive fight. And the way the voting set up in that top flight, it's turkeys and Christmas. Which I would like to see a kind of a big Championship full of full-time teams going at it. And then below that, I know we're talking about adding more senior teams. I would fold the kind of a new 3rd division into a kind of regional north-south, big bumper north-south divisions with teams who are aspirational to be into that Championship. But I would also make it that you have to be full-time, you need to have an academy, you need to have a ground that one works. I would have that sort of, because Scotland's got a kind of a 2-tier system. We've got half the clubs are full-time and half of them are part-time. A lot of time, the part-time clubs are wagging the tail. And I think we could rejig it, keep the meritocracy, but I would like to see the Championship is a great division, but it's so cutthroat with 10 teams, and it's so punishing for teams that go on a bad run and end up in oblivion. There's too many clubs in Scotland that are getting into administration, they're getting points left, right, so they've been missed, they've not been run properly, and I don't think the cutthroat nature of the Championship helps. I think a bigger Championship might absorb those kind of blows that some of them take. We saw what happened in Inverness. We've seen it with Dumbarton, Hamilton Accies now. I just think a big Championship with loads in the line, loads of big playoff positions, like a proper. 16 teams with like a bumper playoffs. I'm talking you could even have I mean, I don't know, you could even have 8 teams in the playoffs. I mean, rather than 3 or 4, but just make it competitive that way. I don't know, but yeah, I would much favour. I'd go for that, definitely.
Aye, no, me too. I think that sounds a lot fairer, more than anything. We've had this comment coming in from, if I can find it, Singing the Blues says, just talk about the Rangers takeover, it's all that matters. I don't think we have any updates on the Rangers takeover, but what I did think was interesting today, Burnsy, was that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is the favourite to be the next Leeds manager, which I thought was interesting given our esteemed colleague Scott McDermott last night was talking about how he thinks Daniel Farke could be in the picture when it comes to the next Rangers manager. I mean, it could well be that a former Rangers manager sets all the dominoes off in a sort of managerial merry-go-round, if that makes sense. Does that seem likely to you, perhaps?
Well, what I would say is that the fact that Daniel Farke is like got Leeds into the Premier League, you know what I mean? And the brand of football he plays, when you watch them, they're just free-flowing, score so many goals, they attack all the time. They're a great watch. So the fact is that if he's even, well, the fact that there's been reports over the last few days that his position's under threat, that's a concern for me for the start, because it looks like he's done an amazing job from the outside. And obviously, I'm not looking at Leeds every week, but I mean, they're obviously one of the favourites to come up. They've done that. They play really good football. I mean, they've got an identity. What more do the Leeds United fans want? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And then it goes back to, what do the owners want? You know what I mean? I mean, I think it would be unfair of him if he lost his job, but that would actually set the alarm bells off for me. You know what I mean? If that's going into Rangers, you know what I mean? For example, if a manager does well, then he might then still, it might not be enough to keep him in a job. You know what I mean? But Van Bronckhorst, I mean, I think he's got a very good managerial record. I think he did well at Rangers. I mean, in European final in difficult circumstances. You know what I mean? He came in after Steven Gerrard. Steven Gerrard, I mean, everyone's talking about Steven Gerrard doing a great job at Rangers, and he stopped 10 in a row. He did. I mean, and obviously won that title, but everyone seems to forget. I mean, history's been rewritten. He spent an absolute fortune on that team to stop 10 in a row. And, I mean, the money, it set Rangers back quite a bit, trying to balance the books again, you know what I mean? So, I mean, Van Bronckhorst, when he came in, it was a difficult job he had. And he got, I mean, obviously, the acid test is trying to topple Celtic. He couldn't do that, but he still took Rangers to a European final in the current climate, which I still think is a tremendous achievement. You know what I mean?
And on top of that, Mick, he took Rangers to European finals, Burnsy says. He won the Scottish Cup and qualified for the Champions League, and he was only there, I think it was almost a year to the day. I think that when people look back in the future, that will go down as a massive mistake to sack Van Bronckhorst.
I get that. Yeah, I think the job he did was, I mean, you won the Scottish Cup as well. Got them to, to get to a European final. I mean, you're talking, was it 10 years after being in the bottom tier of Scottish football?
Aye.
It was an extraordinary story. I don't think we'll even quantify it just until it's far in the distance. It's a huge achievement. Listen, you've got to remember, it fell 9 points behind Celtic. By the time they get the bullet, they played the Champions League, and the Champions League was pretty grim. But as Scott was saying, though, he had to cut his budget to go into the Champions League. And Rangers, with that, I mean, obviously they win with high hopes, but that's an unforgiving environment. And to win that and having had not built on the European success he before and cut his budget, you're kind of lambs to the slaughter. That can happen in that level. Right. But listen, those punishing defeats, those defeats and losing to Celtic heavily, a couple of dull wins to Celtic as well. Yeah. So by the time he went, it kind of felt like he was in a difficult position. I think when you go fast forward to Michael Beale and then Philip Clement got far more leeway than Van Bronckhorst got in terms of where he got to in his reign. So I think they will look back and maybe regret what happened with Van Bronckhorst a wee bit. But I can understand the environment. They're getting thumped in Europe, and they're getting their film well behind Celtic. Yeah. But listen, I thought he was a good manager. I thought he did a good job, and he's proved to be a good manager ever he's been. And it might have just get dragged into the blender at Ibrox.
Aye. Whilst we're on the kind of managerial merry-go-round, let me throw this at you. Mark says Hearts should look at Stephen Robinson or Derek McInnes. My opinion would be Derek McInnes plus a guy who was number 2 at Everton, Duncan Ferguson, number 3 Neil McCann, who is of course ex-Hearts. I know, Burnsy, we got your take on that the other night. You said that your gut feeling was that Stephen Robinson would be in the frame. But Mick, who do you see as the man to make Hearts great again? Could it be Derek McInnes?
Listen, I think Derek would do a fine job at Hearts. I think he'd have Hearts top 4 every year, competing in the last 4 cup competitions. Mm-hmm. So I think that's is that Hearts' ambition. I don't know. We don't know what the kind of, obviously you get the Tony Bloom set up and all that stuff when you talk about the algorithm. I don't think that works for managers. It clearly doesn't work for managers. Might work for players. I don't know if it works for managers. The guys some people are quite snobbish with Derek McInnes because they know him so well. I think Derek's probably the next Scotland manager. Mm-hmm. Regardless, I think if he get to Hearts, he would do a decent job there. Then maybe wait for Scotland in the line. If he doesn't, I think once Steve Clark goes, he'd be the first one to get in the queue for Scotland. I think. But yeah, I think he would do the job for Hearts, not a problem. Stephen Robinson again. I feel for Stephen Robinson. He's always seemed to be a guy manager that's like great work with my budget and all that, and scrimping and saving and digging out players on the cheap and getting results. And you think, might be nice for him to get a few quid to spend, wouldn't it?
It's like, we said the other night, to get St Mirren into the top 6 once, I think it's a huge achievement. 3 seasons in a row.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the trials and tribulations at Hearts, Hibs, and Aberdeen in recent years, and he just steadily chips away and gets results. He digs out players and makes them better. I think he would be another one. It would be a decent choice. You just get the feeling Hearts are going to do something sexy, aren't they? they're going to go for a collection of owls from somewhere, and because the last manager wasn't sexy enough for them. I think in fairness, I think they're a bit. Hearts fans are a bit quick to jump on that. There wasn't quite. They thought they were going to get a sexy manager, and they got a kind of guy who was working English lower leagues and all that stuff, and a coach, nice guy, but they didn't have the kind of star quality. So. Then you think that Derek McInnes and Stephen Robinson are good, qualified, solid managers, but have they got the star quality that the fans might be wanting this time? Because you get the feeling they want something. They want a collection of wacky vowels that are going to be mysterious, and go for there. I think, but is that the way to go? I'm not sure that's the smartest ploy, but who knows what the machine pops out with.
Burnsy, I'm worried that Mick is right, to be honest. I can feel them going a bit continental. I would love them to go for a Stephen Robinson or even a Derek McInnes. I'm sure Kelly and St Mirren fans won't like hearing that. But
Aberdeen were dying for. They wanted a sexy manager. They had the kind of the regular guys in the job, and they wanted something sexy, and they got a sexy manager, and it was great. Then it was bad. Now it's great again. So I mean, they could not end up winning the Scottish Cup and finishing third. Then it works also. So I mean. I think Hearts might look at that and think, we'll have one of those guys, one of those sexy Scandies.
Do you think it'll be a sexy Scandi, Burnsy, or a British kind of manager that knows the Premiership?
I think it'll be if I was a betting man just now, which I'm not, I would put my money on a Scottish-based manager.
Interesting.
I know, I've said Robinson. Be interesting to see what happens with Falkirk in the next 40 hours. I don't think John McGlynn can be. If you look at his record the last 2 seasons, he's been there before. I don't think he can be dismissed either, by all accounts. But when you look online, and the Hearts fans, they want. The Queen's Park Rangers manager has been put in garden leave. The guy Martin Cifuentes. I think Hearts spoke to him a few years ago. There seems to be a lot of love out there for him, sort of thing. So that's maybe. I know social media is not it's only a small vacuum, but maybe that's where a lot of the Hearts fans will be thinking, something along those lines. So, interesting to see where it falls, but I think the board are looking more closer to home.
Aye. Just very finally, before we finish, guys, you mentioned John McGlynn there. Mick, it's Manager of the Year tonight. Do we anticipate it being anyone else other than Brendan Rodgers?
Well, what was it? Brendan Rodgers up against David Gray and John McGlynn.
Yep.
It's hard to see Rodgers not claiming that one as well. If he's favourite to win a treble, it'd be a bit kind of a slap in the face to win the treble and not get Manager of the Year. But John McGlynn, again, I mean, he won it last year, I think, as well. After an unbeaten season to get up to promotion, he looks like he's going to do it again. But listen, this weekend is all to play for, obviously. I think he's a terrific manager. I think he's very down to earth kind of guy. But I think I like the way he plays his football. Weirdly enough, he's actually the John McGlynn of recent years. Actually, has became kind of reinvented himself from his early coaching days after working with Brendan Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
He was obviously scouting at Celtic at the time and did a bit of work with Brendan. And I think he saw the way he worked and thought, you know what, I like this way of operating, and I'm going to have a bash at this myself. And his teams play great football, possession based. His attention to detail is ridiculous. I mean, ask any player that works for him, it's almost like way beyond. I mean, you get your homework to do and all that stuff with John McGlynn. You better do it. Are you sad facing your jotters at the end of the week? So I think, but I can't see past Brendan Rodgers, to be honest with you, winning that one.
You going with that, Burnsy?
Like, it's hard to look past a manager if he wins a treble, right? But you can look at it from everywhere else. Look at the money he's spent. Look at the players he's got at his disposal. Nobody else can even touch them financially, and that's not Brendan Rodgers' fault. I mean, that's not Celtic's fault. But, for example, when you're talking about John McGlynn, I mean, just now, when you look at it, right, out of the three, you'd probably have to say Brendan Rodgers, because what happens, say, for example, if Falkirk were to lose a league on Friday night and don't win the league, you know what I mean? If David Gray doesn't finish third and then Brendan Rodgers doesn't get it, so those three, as it stands, you would need to give it to Brendan Rodgers. But I just think there are so many managers out there doing brilliant jobs. And I mentioned before, and I call him Record Online, about Jim Goodwin as a potential manager of the year. And I wasn't saying that he was the manager of the year, but my argument was that he hadn't spent a penny on transfer fees at all on a newly promoted side. You know what I mean? And you look at that, what he spent nothing compared to what Brendan Rodgers has spent. And you're like, well, surely that comes into the equation, especially if Jim Goodwin was to finish third in the league. Yeah. It also goes back to Jimmy Teelan, Aberdeen. What happens if Aberdeen finish third in the league and win the Scottish Cup? Is that then? Should he?
Aberdeen's best season for 10 years, maybe 30 years.
Aye. He probably should be manager of the year. So, but as it stands out, those three, you'd have to say Brendan Rodgers, because he's won 2 trophies and could win the third. But if he doesn't win the treble, then I think it opens it up. But they will win the treble. And I mean, as well as domestically, in fairness to Brendan Rodgers, Celtic have improved in the Champions League and got to knockout stages as well. So you've got to back him that as well. But I just don't think it's just because he's the top manager that he's done a great job. But if you look at everything else and the riches he's got and everything else, I just think it's too easy just to say Brendan Rodgers, although he's a top manager.
I mean, you're looking at it in context. I totally get your point. Stephen Robinson again. I feel like I'm Stephen Robinson's agent tonight, but I would have had him in there as well. Right.
Daniel, can I just obviously the other story today has come out is the Scottish Cup final. The tickets, they've come out, and Aberdeen have managed to get themselves 20,000 tickets after Dave Cormack and the board they've underwritten the tickets to guarantee 20,000 for Hampden for the cup final, which I think's a great move by Aberdeen. And I know that some of the Celtic fans obviously want more tickets, but I think in terms of a cup final and a spectacle, if you've got close to 50-50 split there, I just think it adds to the day and adds to the spectacle sort of thing.
That's the way it should be, Mick. It should be 50-50 for a final.
As long as it gets sold.
If they get sold, of course.
It's all right. It's all right. Aberdeen saying we'll cough up if we're 2,000 shy, but I think they will sell them. I mean, Scott, you'll know when they up in the ground up there, but I think they will sell the tickets. I think they will sell out. So I don't think it's a gamble to underwrite the tickets. We just don't want empty seats at Hampden for a final. And there's demand. I mean, because there will be demand for other fans to be there. So I don't know if they can sell it in a way that they get to certain kind of marker points and sell certain sections in order. And they get to a stage where it's looking a bit dodgy, they can hand a few back. I don't know. Because I would rather the seats were given back to punters that want to be at the game.
They want to go.
But I think Aberdeen will sell the tickets. So I don't think it's going to.
I mean, the last cup final, the Premier Sports one, they didn't get the I know it's just under 50-50, but they didn't get the sort of half, and they sold them within days for the Rangers final. You know what I mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and the fact is, Aberdeen have not won the Scottish Cup for 35 years. I know Celtic are big favourites, but could be like history making. You know what I mean? It's once in a lifetime for some kid. People. You know what I mean?
Aye,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think they'll sell. I think they will sell them out as well.
Yeah, I just think the Aberdeen board deserve a lot of credit for pushing that out there. I know Hearts have done it in the past, and I just think Aberdeen deserve a bit of credit this year as well.
Aye, definitely credit where it's due, because they take enough stick, the board members up and down the country. So aye, fair play. Right, very finally before we finish, Barca Inter tonight. Mick, how's it going to go? Champions League semi-final.
I think I predicted last night the winner. I think I got a winner last night.
Congratulations.
Yeah, a narrow PSG win. I think Inter had a bit of dodgy form, haven't they? I mean, is it 4 games without a win? Barca, quite an exciting young team. I think Barca will be heading into the second leg with a wee lead. I think it's going to be a Barca PSG final.
Aye, it looks that way, doesn't it, Bunsey? Are you going against that?
In the big game tonight, I don't know. I think Kilmarnock might beat Dundee. That's Scottish final.
It's a very good point.
No, I'm joking. In terms of it, Inter seem to have fallen away in a bit in Serie A, haven't they? Barca, I can't see past Barcelona all these next 2 games.
Aye, me neither.
I think Barcelona PSG final to look forward to.
Aye, that'll be a cracker. Guys, thanks so much for joining me again. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for all of the comments sent in. As I say, we really appreciate it. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We hope you can join us then. Mick, Bunsey, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks for that, chaps.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for watching at home. Cheers.